All right, so this is for chapter 24, the digestive system, for anatomy 2. Gastroenterology is a study of the digestive tract, the digestive system, or gastrointestinal system is another way to say that. Now, there are 6 main purposes of the digestive system: ingestion, to take the food in; secretion, that includes the secretory products inside the GI tract, like mucus, the gastric juice in the stomach; digestion, to chemically break down the molecules that are break down the carbohydrates into smaller monosaccharides, for one example; mechanical digestion, to actually physically break down the pieces, like the teeth make the pieces of the food you're taking in smaller; mixing the food in the stomach; propulsion, moving it downward, esophagus, the peristaltic contractions to move the food downward; absorbing the nutrients; and then getting rid of the waste would be defecation. Like I said, another name for it is the gastrointestinal system. It's composed of the alimentary canal. Another name for that is the GI tract. That's anything that the food actually goes through in the digestive system. And then you have accessory organs that make products that go into help digestion, but the food actually doesn't go through them. An example would be the gallbladder, the liver. You can see here the teeth, the tongue, pancreas. The food doesn't physically travel through these organs, but they all either help break up the food somehow or secrete products that help break up the food. The alimentary canal is about 30 feet in length. That's from your stomach to your anus. The body, okay, so what is metabolism? We'll talk more about that more in detail in a different chapter, but catabolic reactions break down large molecules into smaller molecules. Hello? No, I'm recording the video, Henry. Get out. Not right now. So larger into small. This is called digestion, mechanical or chemical, like I said there. Anabolic is your body taking those small molecules used to build things. For example, in the liver, it takes the small monosaccharides and stores it for later use as glycogen. Mechanical digestion, what does it specifically include? So these are breaking down large molecules, mastication, chewing, swallowing, mixing in the stomach, increases the contact of the food with the digestive chemicals to spur that process along. Peristalsis is the wave-like contractions in the esophagus. Like, think of a go-gurt upside down. You're moving, pushing food down. Oops. Hello. I don't know what that is. Well, you're looking at awesome pictures. All right. Chemical digestion is, here's an image here where, like, a sucrose, which is a disaccharide, a more complex sugar molecule, with the help of water, breaks it down into simple sugars. Here's glucose and fructose. So this is called a hydrolysis reaction, and this is a review of how large molecules are broken down into the smaller building blocks. So, for example, fats. When you're taking fats, they're broken down into simple fatty acids and glycerol. Carbohydrates, like pasta, polysaccharides, into simple monosaccharides. Proteins are broken down into smaller polypeptides, and then even smaller amino acids. You can watch this video if you want. It just kind of shows how an enzyme helps speed along those hydrolysis reactions. Specific enzymes, here's dipeptidase, that breaks down proteins into smaller molecules. So the GI tract is composed of from esophagus down to the anus is 4 basic layers or tissue layers. From deep, so the furthest in the inside, to the outside, they're named mucosal layer, which actually has 3 different layers in that. Submucosal, the muscularis, which you should know what that is. It's made up of muscle. And then the serosa. Advent. This one is specifically to the esophagus, so, because the esophagus doesn't have it isn't called the serosa in the esophagus. The lumen is just the open area in the middle where the food travels through. Anything, when you see the word lumen, that's an opening in the middle. So the mucosa, so this is the innermost layer, has various types of epithelia. It has non-keratinized, so it's not non-pigment or not really strong, stratified squamose. So for protection, so it's in the pharynx, so your throat, your esophagus, your anus. That's where we have stratified squamose. So we're losing those cells often in those areas. They're being sloughed off. Simple columnar, so a different type of tissue, lines the stomach and the intestines. So specifically, those part of your digestive system is more for secreting enzymes to help in digestion and then absorb nutrients. So the lining is different because it has a different purpose. And then all along all of these epithelia, so esophagus 2, throat 2, anus 2, you have cells within it that secrete mucus, exocrine cells, and that is protective and then aids in movement through that layer. So we're still in this first layer here. The lamina propria also contains immune system, lymphatic tissue called the malt that's within that area. So that's like the second layer of the actual mucosa. You can see here mucosa has epithelial tissue, lamina propria, that's what we're talking about now. And then the third layer is muscularis mucosa. So we also have muscle tissue in that first layer. And that helps increase the surface area of that inner lining to get more contact with the food coming through it. The submucosa, so now we're at the second layer, this white in this image. It actually binds or connects that outer layer to the layer beneath, or superior to that, not superior, superficial to that. It contains blood and lymphatic vessels within it, helps to absorb substances. It also contains, and this is important, a nerve plexus. So does this, and you can see the yellow right here. This is the nerve plexus on that white submucosa. You can see this little note down here. Gives larger, contains larger arteries and veins. The muscularis, outside of this, now we talk about the digestive system, you might think, oh, that's only smooth muscle in the alimentary canal or the GI tract, but that's not true. A few parts of it actually contain skeletal muscle, so we have some voluntary control. The superior and middle parts of the esophagus, if you think of, you can voluntarily swallow. So there's some skeletal muscle in the top of your, or in the pharynx, part of your esophagus has, the sphincters have some skeletal muscle, the upper esophageal sphincter. And then your anal sphincter that allows you to voluntarily defecate, which is an important thing. And then, but besides that, it's mainly just smooth muscles. And the smooth muscle in the esophagus has 2 layers. So one layer muscle, then another layer. And then in that muscle layer right here, it also has more nervous stimulation. The outer layer, the serosa, or the adventitia, binds it to the outer layers. And another name for it, or the serosa, it's called the visceral, or the parietal peritoneum. Oh no, visceral, yeah, visceral peritoneum in this case. So it lines the organs in the digestive system. And in between the visceral peritoneum and the parietal peritoneum, remember, those are the serosa. In between them, we have a fluid that helps prevent friction as the organs move kind of over the surface of each other. So that's important to help prevent friction. So there's again the image of the 4 layers: mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and the serosa. The peritoneum is the body's largest serous membrane, and there's actually, and it wraps around almost all of your abdominopelvic organs. There's a parietal peritoneum and a visceral peritoneum. And that's what I just talked about. That outer layer, that serosa, is actually also the visceral peritoneum. And then outside to that is the parietal peritoneum. So if you give, like I used to give mice an intraperitoneal injection once in grad school. So I grab them by their scruff and hold them, and I give them a shot right to the stomach, the gut. It was called an intraperitoneal injection. That injection was supposed to go right in the gut and then access all those organs to put that mouse to sleep. There are actually 5 folds of the peritoneum that have names in the human. The largest one is called the greater omentum, and then we have these more specific ones. So the greater omentum is the largest one and drapes over the transverse colon. So if you open up the abdominopelvic region, you'll see it there. And it looks like fat. It's yellowish in color. This one's called like a fatty apron. It contains lymph nodes. We can deposit more adipose tissue there, and it can expand. Beer bellies. This is where the fat is put to give somebody that awesome beer belly. So here's a good image of an actual cadaver. This is the greater omentum, this whole fatty tissue covering. Here's the diaphragm right here. It's actually been cut a little bit. And you can see the liver right here. The next type of peritoneum is the falciform ligament, which is right in the middle of the liver. Well, kind of in the middle, more closer to the midline. And it actually anchors the liver to the front of the anterior abdominal wall. The lesser omentum, you can see right here, suspends the stomach and the first part of the small intestine from the liver. It's a passageway for a very important vein called the hepatic portal vein that brings blood from your intestines, your spleen, your stomach back to the liver to be filtered. And it also contains a bile duct. So it holds 2 very important blood vessels. And then we have the mesentery, which, if you remember dissecting the pig, if you pull out the intestines, they're all stuck together. That thin tissue holding them all together is the mesentery. A mesenterium has blood vessels within it, and you can break it. Then the mesocolon attaches the bowels in the back to the posterior abdominal wall. Also, so we just talked about the peritoneum. Some organs are actually located behind the peritoneum, and then thus they're located retroperitoneally, or behind that, in that retroperitoneal space. So they're actually behind that mesentery. And they're called, the kidneys are back there, the pancreas, most of the pancreas, the ureters, your adrenal glands, which are on top of your kidneys, and then the aorta and the inferior vena cava. All right, so we'll talk more about these as we go along here, but generally speaking, these are the phases of digestion. We're going to have a cephalic phase, essentially your brain involved in the digestion process, increasing of saliva, things like that, gastric juice, just thinking about food. The gastric phase, what happens in the stomach, the release of a hormone gastrin, you can see, helps secrete gastric juice. And then the intestinal phase down here, that hormone gastrin is decreased. We have absorption of nutrients. All these things together are the phases of digestion. So cephalic,